I learned something recently that honestly blew my mind. And I don't think most Americans know this part of history. And it actually explains a lot about why United States and Iran tension is so bad today. To understand it, we have to go back to the 1950s. Back then, Iran had something called the Shah, basically a king. But here's the important thing most people don't realize. That king did not have full power. Iran actually had something closer to a constitutional monarchy. Think of Britain, meaning the prime minister and parliament held most of the power. The prime minister at the time was Mossadegh, and the people of Iran absolutely loved this guy. Why? Because he did something huge. He nationalized Iran's oil. Before that, a British company controlled most of Iran's profits from their oil. So Mossadegh said, nope, this is our oil. The money should stay in our country. That made him incredibly popular in Iran. It also made Britain furious. So in 1953, something very controversial happened. The United States and Britain ran a coup. It was called Operation Ajax. The goal was simple. Remove Mossadegh from power and give the power to the Shah. The plan was pretty simple. It required the Shah signing a decree to fire the prime minister. The Shah was to take military units loyal to the king to go and arrest the prime minister. And this actually shocked me. The coup completely failed. Mossadegh had been warned. So when the soldiers showed up to arrest Mossadegh, the officers involved in the coup were actually arrested. The entire coup collapsed. At this point, it looked like Mossadegh had won. The Shah panicked. He fled the country. He went to Iraq and Rome. For a moment, it looked like Mossadegh would remain in power and the coup was over. But instead of giving up, the CIA operatives kept pushing. They started organizing protests in Tehran. They paid protesters. They ran propaganda in the newspapers. They even contacted the officers that were still loyal to the Shah to help with the coup. They tried to make it look like the government was completely collapsing. Even propaganda claiming that Mossadegh was too sick to even govern. Massive protests broke out in the streets. The country started to look like it was falling apart. Eventually, parts of the military switched sides. Street protests and military forces started to swing against Mossadegh. His home was attacked and he was arrested. And just like that, the United States and the MI6 coup has succeeded. The Shah came back and returned to power. Declassified CIA documents prove that the United States and MI6 were behind this coup, including all the propaganda and the funding of the political opposition. Now this is where it gets really important. Before the coup, Iran had a semi-democratic leadership. And then after the coup happened, the Shah turned it into something way more authoritarian. He weakened the parliament. He banned opposition parties. And eventually, he created the secret police called the Savak to help him rule. Get this. That secret police force was created by United States intelligence. Savak became notorious for surveillance and suppression of the political opposition. A lot of the moderate political movements were crushed. And here's something interesting. Because political opposition was suppressed, people turned to the churches to safely organize. And one of the biggest critics of the Shah was Khomeini. He was gaining support by saying that the Shah was corrupt, controlled by foreign powers, and even destroying Iran's identity. Over time, that message spread like wildfire. By the late 1970s, anger towards the Shah exploded. Mass protests broke out all across the country. And in 1979, the Iranian Revolution happened. Shah fled the country again. And Khomeini returned to Iran to establish the Islamic Republic as still exists today. For Iranians, the 1953 coup became a symbol of foreign interference. A lot of people believed that their government had been sabotaged. The distrust for the United States didn't just disappear. In fact, it played another role in another huge event. Later, in 1979, Iranian students seized the American embassy in Tehran, later known as the Iran hostage crisis. The Iranians feared the United States may launch another coup, just like in 1953, especially after the United States allowed the Shah to travel to the United States for medical treatment. Some Iranians believed this was the first step to putting him back into power. So the Iranians took over the embassy. They called it a den of spies. If Mossadegh had not been overthrown in 1953, Iran would still be a constitutional monarchy, which means the Islamic Republic would never have come to power in the first place. So when people ask why Iran hates us so much, a lot of it traces back to what happened 70 years ago, and most Americans have never even heard about it.